He thought I'd always be waiting, loyal, naive, broken beyond repair. He thought I'd mourn him forever after he betrayed me so easily, so cruelly. But I wasn't the same woman he walked away from. I died the day he left me, but I was reborn with something far more powerful than love. Purpose. And when I walked into that room with my husband, the look on his face was everything. The rain came down in steady sheets, painting the streets in a melancholy gray as I stood by the window of my cramped apartment. A cold mug of coffee sat forgotten on the counter, next to the burnt remains of breakfast I didn't have the strength to eat. Silence had a way of crawling in between walls when the person you loved most had walked out, and slammed the door behind him. I used to be Elena. Or at least that's what everyone called me, soft-spoken, devoted, warm-hearted Elena. But that version of me shattered the moment Jason leaned across our candlelit anniversary dinner and whispered the words that would split me in two. I think we need to take a break. I'm not in love with you anymore. I didn't cry. Not then. I blinked slowly as though trying to wake up from a dream that didn't belong to me. The waiter hovered nearby, holding a dessert I had pre-ordered with "Forever, my love" written in chocolate. I nodded politely at Jason, pretending my throat wasn't closing in, pretending my heart wasn't about to combust inside my chest. The next few days moved like syrup. Slow, suffocating, sticky with regret. Jason had been my first everything. First kiss. First love. First man I trusted. We'd been together since college, 7 years of history built on late-night ramen, shared textbooks and promises under blankets. We had plans. A mortgage application sitting half-filled in a drawer. Wedding venues bookmarked on my phone. But the truth I would soon find out was uglier than I imagined. 3 weeks after the break, I went to our old apartment to pick up the last of my things. That's when I saw her. Her hair damp from the shower, wearing Jason's old t-shirt. My t-shirt, really. The one I used to sleep in. She looked up and smiled, shameless. Not even startled. That's when I realized, this wasn't new. She hadn't just shown up after he left me. He had always been there. A shadow in the corner of our relationship. A name I ignored on his phone. A coworker he said was just funny, not even my type. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I walked out, clutching the box of our memories like it was radioactive. That night I stared at my reflection for a long time. The girl looking back at me was pale, hollow-eyed, and tired. But beneath that tiredness was something more dangerous. Clarity. I had spent 7 years building a future with a man who threw it all away like it meant nothing. He hadn't just betrayed me. He had mocked the version of me that believed in him. And that's when Elena, the girl he betrayed, died. What rose from her ashes was someone new. I moved cities. Started small. Took a job as a receptionist at a mid-tier real estate firm. Most would have called it a step down from the graphic design work I once did for Jason's company, but I needed distance more than prestige. For the first 6 months I lived on ramen and savings. I worked late, studied after hours, and enrolled in a real estate licensing program. It was in that silence, that solitude, that I began to rebuild, brick by calculated brick. I learned to sell. Then I learned to negotiate. I watched my manager spin gold out of small talk and started mimicking every move she made. I became indispensable. And when the market crashed, I was the one who kept deals alive. The owner noticed. Within 2 years I had my own office. A year later I was co-leading a commercial development project with a man named Adrian Holt. Adrian was everything Jason wasn't: methodical, reserved, strategic. And I didn't fall for him quickly. I was too guarded for that. But one night, after a late meeting that turned into whiskey and quiet conversation, he said something that made my armor crack. You don't look at people the way most do. It's like you already know how the story ends. I looked at him, heart thudding softly. That's because I've already lived through the worst chapter. And he just nodded, no pity, no questions. Just respect. That's how it started. Slow, steady. No fireworks. Just a quiet rebuilding. A gentle recognition of pain, matched with a shared hunger to rise above it. Adrian didn't save me. He simply stood beside me while I saved myself. 2 years later I was Elena Holt, co-owner of Holt and Vale Properties. Partner to one of the fastest rising developers in the state. Independent. Strong. Married. And completely forgotten, so I thought, by Jason. Until fate dropped an invitation onto my assistant's desk. A business summit. A panel on real estate marketing and development strategies. I was slotted as one of the keynote speakers. And so was Jason Maddox. My assistant smiled as she handed me the packet. Apparently you're sharing the stage with the CEO of Maddox Creative. Big deal, right? I smiled back. But inside my pulse skipped. Not from nerves. From something colder. He didn't know. Of course he didn't. He still thought I was the girl he left behind. Still imagined me folding in pain every time his name came up. He was about to find out just how wrong he was. The morning of the summit dawned bright and merciless. Sunlight sliced through the sleek glass walls of the downtown Marriott as I stepped out of the black car, my heels tapping purposefully against the polished concrete. Adrian walked beside me, tall and composed in his tailored navy suit, his fingers loosely brushing mine. Not possessive. Just present. His presence was a quiet vow. The event hall was buzzing with names and egos. Real estate moguls, marketing executives, tech founders. Industry sharks in pressed suits. People who'd never heard of the girl once abandoned over dessert. And now they knew my name. Elena Holt. Co-founder. Keynote speaker. Industry expert. It was poetic. The coordinator greeted us with a practiced smile. Mrs. Holt, Mr. Holt. Pleasure to have you. You're slotted for the second panel this afternoon. Mr. Maddox is first, actually. I could feel it, the subtle shift in my pulse, the quiet tightening in my chest. His name, spoken like he hadn't once reduced my world to rubble. I smiled politely and nodded, letting the words slide over me like water off steel. We made our way to the lounge where speakers waited before going on stage. And then, I saw him. He stood with his back to me, laughing too loudly at something a woman in stilettos had said. His hair was styled the same, though grayer now. His suit fit him tighter, his arrogance worn more openly. I wondered idly if he would recognize me. Then he turned. And for a moment the entire room quieted. His eyes landed on mine and froze. His smirk faltered. He blinked. Like he was staring at a ghost. Elena? He breathed as if the sound of my name might undo him. I tilted my head, cool and composed. It's been a while. He took a step forward, completely ignoring Adrian's presence beside me. Wow. I didn't know you were speaking here. Are you back in design? I smiled, cold and sweet. No. I co-own Holt and Vale Properties. We're developing the East Side corridor downtown. It's in the papers. You might have seen it. I watched the flicker in his eyes. The realization. The calculation. Then Adrian stepped forward, calm but commanding. Jason Maddox, I assume? Adrian Holt. Elena's husband. Jason's lips parted but no words came out. He extended a hand out of reflex but Adrian only gave a polite nod. The handshake never happened. I didn't linger. I didn't offer small talk or nostalgia. I turned, letting my hand rest lightly on Adrian's arm and walked away without looking back. But I could feel Jason's eyes on me. Like a man who just realized the woman he buried had clawed her way out, and now stood taller than him. The panel began shortly after. Jason went on first. He was smooth as always, charming, confident, peppering jokes and buzzwords like candy to the audience. But something in him was off. I saw it in the way he kept glancing toward the wings, his rhythm slightly offbeat. His sentences tangled mid-thought whenever his gaze swept across me. And the audience noticed too. His confidence had an edge of something sour now, like an actor aware the real star had already entered the wings. When our turn came, Adrian let me speak first. And I did. Not with bitterness. Not with fire. But with poise, intelligence, and undeniable command. I spoke of vision. Of risk and rebirth. Of how failure is sometimes the fire we need to forge diamonds. The words weren't just for the room. They were for him. Because I knew Jason would hear the truth layered between the lines. When I was done, the room applauded louder than it had for any speaker that morning. And Jason? He couldn't even look up. Later, at the networking gala, I found myself alone near the glass terrace, enjoying the night air. The skyline shimmered below like a constellation made of glass and ambition. That's when I heard his voice behind me. Elena, can we talk? I turned, wine glass still in hand. About what? He hesitated, then gave a half-laugh like this was all some surreal joke. You really disappeared, huh? Damn. Holt and Vale? I had no idea. That was the point, I said simply. He looked at me like he was seeing me for the first time. You look incredible. I mean it. Different, but good. Strong. I am different, I replied. You made sure of that. He winced just slightly and shoved his hands in his pockets. I was an idiot. I know that now. I took a slow sip of my wine. You weren't an idiot. You were calculated. You cheated. Built a second relationship behind my back while asking me to plan a life with you. That's not idiocy. That's cruelty. His face crumbled for a moment. I wasn't happy. And I didn't know how to say it. Then don't pretend it was love, I said, voice calm but cutting. You didn't fall out of love, Jason. You fell into something easier. He sighed, stepping closer. I still think about you. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I hadn't messed it all up. The audacity made me smile. Jason, the only reason you're saying this now is because you didn't expect me to rise. You thought I'd stay broken. Quiet. Maybe even hope for your return. But look around. I didn't wait. I rebuilt. He looked down, jaw clenched. Is it serious? With him. I raised my left hand, letting the diamond on my finger gleam under the terrace lights. We're married. His mouth opened slightly. I didn't, no. I leaned in just enough so he could hear me clearly. No, you didn't. Because you never cared to look. No. You don't get to know anything about me. I stepped past him, walking back into the gala. I didn't check if he followed. Because I knew. That moment, standing alone, discarded, was the first time Jason truly felt the loneliness he had gifted me years ago. And it was just the beginning. After the summit, Jason Maddox couldn't sleep. He told himself it was a fluke. Our encounter, the timing, the fact that I was now someone he couldn't ignore in his industry. He told himself that seeing me again wasn't supposed to matter. But it did. Worse, he couldn't get Adrian's face out of his mind. Or the way Adrian held me, not possessively but protectively, like someone who didn't need to compete to know he'd already won. That simple fact bruised Jason in ways he couldn't articulate. Because Adrian was everything Jason pretended to be. And I was unrecognizable. Gone was the girl who used to stutter apologies for things she didn't do, who decorated our shared apartment with hand-painted memories of him, who brought him coffee with sticky notes saying you're my favorite place. Now I stood in boardrooms, commanded attention and carried silence like a weapon. Jason watched clips of the summit replayed online. I went viral for a moment, the comeback queen, some captioned it. He scrolled through the comments. Most were about the speech. Some were about me. And a few had noticed something he didn't expect. Anyone else notice the guy in the front row during Elena Holt's speech? Looked like he'd seen a ghost. She really said rebirth, with her ex in the room. Cold. That's not a glow-up. That's resurrection. Jason shut his laptop violently. The bitterness in his chest wasn't just jealousy. It was panic. For the first time he realized what he had done wasn't just lose a girlfriend. He had created a rival. Days later he tried to coincidentally show up at a developer mixer Adrian and I were attending. He waited until Adrian stepped away to answer a call before approaching me at the bar. I was sipping a lemon spritz, watching the glittering rooftop lights reflect in the pool below. The city moved beneath us but I stood still, rooted, calm, unshakable. You look radiant, Jason said, standing far too close. Seriously, Elena. I didn't turn. You said that already. At the summit. He chuckled nervously. Yeah, well, still true. I finally faced him. Why are you here? Can't I say hello? You had your goodbye 2 years ago. You chose it if you've forgotten. He shoved his hands into his pockets. I've been thinking, maybe I made a mistake. I raised an eyebrow. Which part? Cheating? Lying? Or the bit where you said you weren't in love with me anymore, just before the check came? He winced. You don't have to be cruel. I'm not being cruel, Jason, I said evenly. I'm just being accurate. He looked at me like a man realizing the door he walked through now led to a brick wall. I miss what we had. Before it got messy. Before you made it messy, I corrected. He sighed, his voice dipping lower. I never stopped caring about you. That made me laugh. Quiet and cold. Caring? Jason, you don't even know me anymore. Then just to twist the blade I added, but my husband does. Jason's nostrils flared. Do you love him? I leaned in close, my voice like silk-wrapped steel. Fiercely. And he loves me back, without games, without betrayal, without conditions. I left him standing there, clutching his drink like it was the only anchor left. From that night forward, things began to unravel for Jason. The woman he left me for, Rachel, walked out on him 3 weeks after the summit. I heard through a mutual acquaintance that she accused him of being emotionally distracted and still chasing ghosts. Apparently, she found messages he never sent. Emails drafted to me but never sent. Deleted search history full of my name. She accused him of never letting me go. He didn't deny it. Jason began showing up to industry events more often. Not to network. To find me. To talk. To try and stir something that no longer existed. But every time he saw me with Adrian, steady, calm, real, and something inside him wilted further. Adrian noticed. "You want me to say something to him?" he asked one evening after Jason made a too-long appearance at a private investment gala. I smiled gently. No need. Let him destroy himself trying. A month later, I was reviewing final layouts for a property when my assistant buzzed me. "There's a Mr. Maddox here to see you." Said it's urgent. I didn't pause. "Tell him I'm in a meeting and unavailable. Indefinitely." There was a beat of silence before she answered, "Understood." Jason didn't stop. He sent flowers. Emails. A letter. Yes, a literal letter. Handwritten. Apologizing. Reminiscing. Begging. It stayed unopened in my drawer. I wasn't interested in apologies fueled by regret. Only actions mattered. And Jason's actions had already spoken. But karma, I had come to learn, has exquisite timing. Because weeks later a scandal broke out. Maddox Creative had been caught falsifying design mock-ups and submitting manipulated performance metrics for investor pitches. A whistleblower came forward with hard drives full of damning emails, and Jason's name was all over them. Overnight, the man who once stood smugly across the table from me became a headline. Jason Maddox faces civil charges for investor fraud. Former CEO under investigation. Maddox Creative in free fall. His shares tanked. His sponsors pulled out. And the clients? Some of them came to me. Adrian and I were in a meeting when the news broke. He looked at me from across the table, phone screen still glowing. "You knew something was coming, didn't you?" I leaned back in my chair, completely at ease. He's a man who got used to getting away with things. Eventually that catches up. Adrian watched me for a moment, a slow smirk forming. "Remind me never to cross you. You wouldn't survive it," I teased. But beneath the playfulness was something sharper, final. Jason's fall wasn't orchestrated by me. But watching it felt like justice breathing. Conclusion, end of part 3. Jason thought my silence meant I was gone. Forgotten. Still nursing the wounds he gave me. He thought chasing me down would somehow undo the damage. But the truth? I wasn't waiting for him to fall. I was simply living high enough that he couldn't reach me anymore. And from that height, I watched him drown in the choices he once made with a smirk. Because sometimes revenge doesn't come with fire. It comes with freedom. The email had arrived a week earlier, dressed up like an invitation but reading more like a plea. Subject: Maddox Creative. A night of innovation, the future reimagined. Jason was hosting a rebranding gala, and the venue was suspiciously grand for a man whose company was gasping for breath. Investors were whispering, headlines were circling like vultures, and Maddox Creative was hemorrhaging staff. And yet, Jason was throwing a party. Adrian stood behind me, scanning the screen. "He's either lost his mind or his pride." "Probably both," I murmured. "This isn't for investors. This is for me. Want to skip it?" I looked up, the corner of my mouth curving. "No. Scope. Let's see what desperation looks like in a tailored suit." The venue was an old historic theater transformed into an event space. Marble pillars, chandeliers, too much velvet. The kind of place people rented when they were trying to look richer than they were. When we stepped inside, eyes turned. I could feel it, the tension shift, conversations pause, the air thicken. "Elena Holt," someone whispered near the bar. "That's her. From Holt and Vale." I walked in with Adrian beside me, hand gently resting on the small of my back, calm and composed. We didn't have to announce ourselves. Our presence did that for us. Jason appeared moments later, descending from the mezzanine like some fallen king still pretending his crown wasn't cracked. "Elena," he said, smiling too wide. Adrian. I'm glad you made it. Couldn't miss it, I replied, voice smooth. It's not every day someone throws a rebranding gala during a lawsuit. A flicker of discomfort crossed his face. It's just a reset. A chance to remind everyone who we are. You mean who you were, Adrian said, casually sipping his drink. Jason ignored him and turned to me. Can we talk? Just alone. I held his gaze, eyes steady. Anything you want to say to me you can say right here. Around us people pretended not to listen. But I saw the stolen glances, the sudden hush in nearby clusters of suits and sequins. This was his moment, and he didn't even realize the spotlight was already burning. He cleared his throat. Elena, I know I made mistakes. I was arrogant, blind. And I've spent the last few months thinking about what I lost. Your company? I asked. Your girlfriend? Your influence? No, he said, his voice suddenly soft like it was meant for the girl I used to be. I lost you. And I never should have let you go. For a second the room held its breath. But I didn't. Because this was the speech he had rehearsed in his mirror. This was the moment he thought would bring it all back. The old magic, the old girl, the old control. He thought I would melt. That I would see his vulnerability and hand him back the comfort of being the center of someone's world. That I smiled. Then laughed, quietly at first, then louder. Not cruel. Just amused. Jason, I said, calm as ice. You didn't lose me. You discarded me. And you did it for convenience, not conviction. His jaw tightened, but I wasn't done. I begged you to fight for us once. Do you remember that? I cried on the bathroom floor while you told me I was too much. Too emotional. Too needy. I was wrong, he whispered. Yes. You were, I replied, my tone sharpening. But not because you lost me. You were wrong because you assumed I'd stay broken. That I'd wait in some invisible corner of your life, hoping you'd come back and rescue me. I stepped forward then, my voice lowering so only those closest could hear. But they were listening, every one of them. I rescued myself. I built a life you don't belong in anymore. And the man beside me. I turned slightly toward Adrian. He didn't find me at my best. He found me rebuilding from the wreckage you left, and he stayed. That's the difference. Jason's eyes darted across the room, suddenly aware of the stares. The judgment. The weight of every whispered word. Please, he said, voice trembling now. Just tell me, is there really no hope? I looked at him. Really looked at him. And then I answered crystal clear, not in this lifetime. We left him standing there, alone in the center of his own event, eyes red, fists clenched, tie crooked. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I knew what he looked like when everything collapsed. Because I had been there once. And I knew the exact moment the pain hits. The moment you realize the person you thought would always be yours never really was. The next morning, headlines erupted. CEO's emotional plea at gala backfires. Ex publicly rejects Jason Maddox. Holt unveils Elena. Holt delivers final blow to ex in viral moment. Power couple shuts down desperate PR stunt. Clips were everywhere. The moment I said, not in this lifetime, looped endlessly. People called it savage. Empowering. Legendary. And Jason? His investors dropped him the next day. His company folded a week later. He made one last attempt to email me. I never thought it would end like this. I didn't reply. Because it hadn't ended that night. It ended the moment he thought I'd always be his backup plan. After the gala, Jason Maddox all but disappeared. He didn't call. He didn't write. No more desperate emails. No more half-hearted apologies. No more coincidental appearances at industry events. Just silence. And that, in many ways, was the loudest thing he'd ever done. I expected I'd feel something when it finally ended. Some weight lifted, some surge of victory. But it wasn't that. It was emptiness. A soft, quiet kind of peace that came when the battle you thought would define you turned out to be a chapter you could close without a sound. Adrian noticed it first, in the way I began sleeping through the night again. You're not dreaming about him anymore, he said one morning, handing me coffee. No, I admitted. I think that version of me is gone. And she's not coming back. He didn't say anything, just reached across the table and held my hand. No words. Just quiet understanding. Because Adrian never asked me to forget what I'd been through. He just gave me space to become someone stronger because of it. In the months that followed, everything shifted. Our downtown project broke ground, 23 stories of glass and steel and resilience, the kind of legacy that couldn't be ignored. Newspapers dubbed it the Phoenix. Fitting. We hired a new creative team. Ironically, one of the lead designers had left Maddox Creative when it collapsed. He was nervous when he saw my name on the partnership paperwork. "I didn't know you were that Elena Holt," he said in the interview, rubbing the back of his neck. "Everyone in the industry knows what happened now." "I'm not here to talk about what happened," I replied. "I'm here to talk about what we're building." He got the job. Because I wasn't recruiting people who worshipped my past. I was building a future that didn't need to relive it. A few weeks later, I got an anonymous package at the office. No return label. No note. Inside was a small silver frame, worn and slightly tarnished. A photo of Jason and me from college. We were sitting on a park bench, laughing. My hair was longer then. His smile was real. I stared at it for a moment. Not with sadness. Just a detachment. Like looking at strangers from a different time. I walked the frame down to the shredder room, lifted the lid on the recycling bin and dropped it in. The sound it made hitting the bottom was faint, like a final breath leaving a dying memory. Closure, it turns out, doesn't come with revenge. Comes with indifference. Jason's name popped up in the news one final time, 6 months later. A small headline on page 7 of a trade journal. Former CEO Jason Maddox relocates to Europe following company bankruptcy. No criminal charges were ever filed, though several lawsuits bled him dry. He sold his condo, his shares, his car. The man who once told me I wasn't enough now lived in a flat in Lisbon, teaching freelance branding courses online. A quiet end. No empire. No legacy. No audience. I read the article once, then deleted it. I didn't save the link. Didn't mention it to Adrian. I didn't need to. That chapter was over. And this was the life I chose. Spring came fast that year. The city unfurled in blossoms and golden haze, and our building opened ahead of schedule. We hosted a launch party on the rooftop. String lights, live jazz, champagne and stories. People came from everywhere. Clients, friends, even my parents who still hadn't fully grasped the woman I had become, but looked at me with something like awe. "You're glowing," my mother whispered as she hugged me. "I don't think I've seen you this happy since." She stopped herself. But I didn't flinch. Since I stopped pretending everything was okay, I finished for her. She smiled. "You were always stronger than you let on." "Now I don't have to hide it anymore," I replied. As the evening wound down, Adrian and I stood near the edge of the rooftop, looking out over the skyline. The city buzzed with life below us. Cars, lights, possibilities. "This is everything we dreamed of," he said. "No," I said gently, leaning against him. "It's better. Because the dream I once had was built with the wrong person. But this life was mine. Brick by brick. Scar by scar. Choice by choice. And the man beside me? He didn't complete me. He simply stood beside me while I became whole." A few minutes later, someone handed Adrian an envelope. He read the card inside, furrowing his brow. "Who's it from?" I asked. He handed it to me. No name. Just a short message typed in plain text. "I hope you found peace." I never did. But maybe that's justice. There was no signature. But I knew who it was. I smiled faintly and set the card down on the cocktail tray behind me. Then I reached for Adrian's hand. "Let's go," I said. "It's time." "Time for what?" "For the rest of our life." The end.